Hello, back I am. God, you can tell this one's going to go well, can't you? 48 in the first line. It's called Insignificance. The first line is one of introspection, as we know, and it is the foundation of the hexagram. And here it is called insignificance. One of the things to understand about depth is that it takes time. Each of these lines require a different kind of spacing in life because they can actually reach the point where the well is full and rich with what is inside it. The exaltation says an instinctive recognition of what is practical and deserves attention. A taste for recognizing what is practical and deserves attention. And you might wonder why I'm repeating myself. And it's because if you look in the Rave I Ching, which is my Bible, Rave I Ching, it looks like this. And each line, it comes down and it's written in plain script and then it's written in italics. And that's because when Ra was putting all of this together, initially he wrote the plain script first, so the non-italicized script first, and then he went back afterwards and he put what was called the white book. What he'd written from the white book went in as well. So that's why it often sounds like there's a repetition, because the first bit is the original, you could say, of what he put into the Rave I Ching, and then the second bit is that italicized bit that comes from the white book. He initially put that in because he felt it often made things a little bit clearer, because some of the lines sometimes can sound like they've just come straight out of a fortune cookie, and you look at it and you think, really? I have no idea what that means. And there are times when actually the original makes a little bit more sense, and sometimes you just have to sit with them, and other times they're fairly obvious. So this is why I just wanted to explain that, because I had a comment on that where someone was asking me about the way that I phrase it and why do I phrase it that way. So the exaltation, the original text was an instinctive recognition of what is practical and deserves attention. And then in the white book, a taste for recognizing what is practical and deserves attention. A solution has to be practical, an idea does not. The 11th gate is the gate of white magic. An idea does not have to be practical. It doesn't. Whereas a solution has to work. It has to, otherwise it's not a solution to anything, is it? It has to be a practical solution that can be experimented with logically. In the detriment, we have an ego tendency to apply energy to trivial considerations, a taste for trivia. You could have a great solution for how you're going to turn straw into gold, but nobody pays you any attention. So you provide a solution for something that is more acceptable, just to see what it feels like to have your solution manifested, to have your depth appreciated. But your depth then gets into trivia, and the trivia becomes a way of life instead of really being able to establish a clear solution, a clear foundation. This is a lower trigram. There are no social skills in the lower trigram, and this is collective. The collective kind of needs its social skills because every channel in collective circuitry is inherently social. But in the lower trigram, everything is a surprise for them. They meet someone else. Whoa, where did you come from? They don't know that the 16 is there at the other end of the channel. They don't know that they're part of the circuitry. They're doing what they're doing for themselves. Introspection. It is unlikely that a 48-1 is going to display its depth. Really, it's more interested in trying to figure out what depth actually is, rather than putting its depth on display. What's a good solution? What's the kind of solution that can be experimented with, that can benefit the collective? This is a basic dichotomy that exists within the nature of the well. It has two sides. It has the capacity to recognize and understand patterns that are of benefit to humanity, because this is a collective process. And on the other side, no, it's the recognition of the patterns and all the trivia that is connected to those patterns. Depth always represents the possibility of something that is practical and deserves attention. And it also represents the opposite, the trivial, the impractical, and what doesn't really deserve attention. In many respects, this depth isn't solely about what's important. It's also about what is simply there. Oh, it's recognizing, being aware of the collective environment. To be able to do that is the foundation of depth. It's not limited to a prejudice that says, I can only go deep because that is what is of value. This is the mind talking. Gate 48 has nothing to do with the mind. It's way down here in the splenic system. Mind is way up here. So it might be that the triviality of it all is what is necessary to come out. Who's judging anyway? What's trivial for one person might be hugely important for another. Take the Brentford Football Club example. I maybe won't go over that too many times. He's in charge of soccer this week. This is the depth and is coming into all of us all the time. And we're not necessarily consciously involved with this process at all. It is simply there, and suddenly it's going to blurt out of our mouths. And we've collected all of these patterns. They're suddenly just emerging. Part of recognizing depth is accepting that the basis of depth is not to be judgmental from the mental perspective about what your depth is made up of. And this is quite tricky because we're coming out of gate 18. Gate 18 is the gate of correction, in that wonderfully judgmental channel. So there's still that hint of it coming through. We're only in the first line here of gate 48. But really, there's no need to judge what the depth is made up of. The fear here is the fear of inadequacy. The only thing to do is to relax and accept that you are deep. If you have this gate, you're deep. Even us that don't have this gate, while we're borrowing it from the sun's energy, hey, I've got a bit of depth hanging out here today. How nice. Accept it. And remember that you cannot judge your depth from your mind. Ra had gate 48 in both of his Neptunes, and this is what Neptune taught him. He was never allowed to see it for himself, of course, because Neptune puts a veil over things. It makes them sort of very fuzzy. It's a depth that has nothing to do with the way that we think. It's just collecting. It's just filling up the well. And if you carry this gate in your design, you will collect exactly the depth that you need. So the grounding is in gate 21. And the first line here is called warning. Is this a warning to pay attention to the stories that your mind is telling you about what understanding you're collecting? Or perhaps other people have that judgment about what you're filling your well with. Gate 48 is in the stream of taste. It's your taste that is concerned with what you are bringing in. It's nothing to do with anybody else. What is your taste? I suppose it could also be a warning not to force recognition, not to force an invitation to share your depths, because then it doesn't really count. But just sit back and enjoy your trivia if that is what you're giving your attention to. If you're operating according to your strategy and authority, the right people are going to come along and they will appreciate whatever it is you've got to offer, whether it's considered trivial or not. Trivia can be fun. It can sometimes. So we have a channel for this transit, the whole of the transit, because Jupiter is in gate 45. It is Jupiter, isn't it? Yes, it is. Jupiter is in gate 45, and the Earth, of course, is in gate 21. So this brings us the money line. This is a design of a materialist. This is the line that has the resources or can gather the resources in order to keep the tribe strong. And so in that sense, it has some control over the tribe. He who controls the resources controls the man. This is also a channel that recognizes the power of education in keeping the tribe loyal. It's a channel that runs between the ego and the throat, and it has a voice that says, I have. It's the only voice of the tribe, and it is unashamedly, excuse me, unashamedly possessive of its resources. Tribe must have resources in order to stay viable, really. So the moon is still in gate 18. It went in at 7:12 yesterday, and the sun left gate 18 earlier on this morning. And the gate of correction, of course, in the stream of taste, the same stream that our 48 is in, continuing its journey through the splenic gates. The moon is going through. We've got double splenic activations for a few days. We have the light of the sun and the focus of the moon. So the moon moves into gate 48 at 1840. That's where our sun is now, the gate of depths, the gate of depths, the well of solutions. And then it is transiting into gate 57. So you can have a bit of a spoiler alert here, because this is where the sun will go in 6 days' time. But the moon goes in at 6:07 tomorrow morning, the gate of intuitive insight, gate 57. It's also called the gentle. In terms of fears, because we know splenic gates have got fears, we are maybe having a little bit of extra focus on the fear of authority, just coming in from that gate 18, and then pushing into the fear of inadequacy in gate 48, or maybe people noticing how shallow you are, followed by a fear of tomorrow or a fear of the future, because that's what we get when the moon moves into 57. And they're only little tasters when the moon moves through, and very often we don't really notice them, because it's only, 11 hours or so that the moon is in each gate. So I get much more of a flavor of these energies when the sun is in them, because of course we have 6 days or so to play and to experience and to get down to get down and dirty with the splenic system. Yes, so that's us for today. That's line 1 in gate 48. I will see you tomorrow for line 2, and look after yourselves as we go through this season. Take your firesider if that's working for you, and just look after your lovely selves. And yeah, I don't know what to say. I want to say that, you're not alone. Whatever you're going through, there is going to be somebody else on the planet who is going through it in a similar way. Not exactly the same way, because we all have our ways. We're all unique. But somebody else is going to be feeling similar to you. So you're not alone, and you're not broken. Always remember that. Human design tells us that very, very strongly. Nothing wrong with any of us. Now, we might be going through a really shitty time. Well, it doesn't mean we're broken. We're just going through a shitty time. And this too will pass. My love to you all, and go gently, and I will see you again tomorrow.